Hey, Rachel. You're muted.
Thank you so much. I was saying, hey, Sam, good to virtually see you again. And Dr. Spencer,
I would let
hello,
you see me
welcome.
if I have a shower.
You.
I'll mute myself and put my video off and ask that people introduce themselves, and we'll get started here momentarily.
Sounds good.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh my goodness, Lord willing. Hey, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good. Nice to see you.
Good to
Hi,
see
Laura. Good to see you.
you.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
Hey, Rachel.
Dr.
Worship.
Dawkins and Dr. Lee, I wanted to give you guys a really brief introduction. We have a
Okay.
decent already this afternoon, so we can go ahead and get started if y'all are okay getting started. I think Sam started the audio recording and the video recording here. Do you all have any issues with tech things? Do you need help setting anything up, or are you good to go on your end?
You know, I think the only challenge, and I got Winston for my backup, is that I was just going to share 2 slides, no biggie, and I can certainly do it without it. So.
Perfect. Yeah, the goal is very casual. Winston,
Yeah.
same for you. Do you have any issues or anything that you need from me to be helpful?
Oh, I
I think
see
I'm all good.
Evan.
Thanks.
I see Evan's face.
Well, we can go ahead and get started then. So y'all don't take much introduction because the whole world knows you anyways. But welcome to our monthly webinar for the Alumni Ambassador Series. The goal with these webinar programs is really just so that people from UNC can showcase all the great things that are happening on the main campus, and so that all of us who are no longer on the main campus in the community or at different hospitals, or maybe actually associated with the department, but just doing our own work in our own silos, we can all kind of get connected and see what everyone's doing and see how we can serve as a bidirectional referral system, referring patients to UNC main campus if they need something, or to the community if they're our alumni that we know are well-trained, doing great things in different locations, and that we might work together to accomplish the same goals. So it's nice to have some networking opportunities, and the goal of these webinars is really to be super casual, mostly conversational, no stress on the presenters to lead the entire hour or speak the entire hour. It's kind of nice just to say hello to people we haven't seen in a while, somewhat similar to like our water cooler series that you all have on Mondays. Serves the same purpose here so that we can kind of connect and bridge the gap between people who are still in the department and those who have left and done other things. But our speakers for today are Dr. Karon Dawkins and Dr. Winston Lee. Dr. Dawkins probably really needs no introduction at all. She has been the training director of the general psychiatry program at UNC for many years, I'll say, and more recently given the great title of the vice chair of education for the department. On top of all of the recruitment, educational activities, supervision, everything that she does with education, she also does ECT, which is no small undertaking for a couple months a year. She is a great clinician and a great educator, and most of the residents will openly admit very candidly the first day that they choose UNC to train with because of her. In large part, it's because of her knowledge of the program, of the material that's covered, and proximity and like closeness with the residents that she trains. It makes it feel very personal and really gives the family feel to the training environment. Dr. Winston Lee is a newer addition to the department as far as the training director and the assistant director role goes. He is an inpatient adult psychiatrist and educator. He focuses a lot on the psychotic disorders unit, and he is the associate residency program training director. which has given Dr. Dawkins, I'm sure, a well-deserved break so that it's a 2-person job, maybe even a 4-person job. And Winston's amazing. And what he does, he was pivotal in starting a lot of the clinical educator track within the department. And I'm sure you'll speak about the new tracks that are coming and being developed, but he started it and has led many great residents to go through that program to become educators with their primary focus moving forward in their own careers. So it was fun to see Winston do those things when he was my chief, and it's really exciting to see him continue to do those things while he's been faculty. So I'll let you all take it off. Today our focus is really about education, to hear what UNC is doing as far as education. And I'd love to hear from other alumni to see what your engagement is with education in the community and at other hospitals, and what people are finding themselves involved with to still have some ties in the academic educational world of medicine.
All right, well, it's good to see everybody. I'm just gonna share just, trust me, it's not a slideshow or anything. It's just a couple of slides so to help organize myself. And so we'll go to, so obviously this is the Robert Bashford UNC Alumni Society monthly webinar series. I'm very grateful that Rachel is involved with this. Good to see you, and it's nice to see some familiar faces. And I just wanted to thank you guys for this opportunity just to talk informally about what may be new in residency education. There's one person that I don't know, and so that's Dr. De Silva. If you want to take a moment to tell us who you are, and then there's Dr. Is that Hirsch?
Yeah, Hirschfield.
Hirschfield. Okay, so tell us a little bit about you, because I didn't train you and Dr. Silva. So how long has it been since you've been at UNC?
I'll go first. I'm Bruce Hirschfield. I was there from 1971 to 1974 when I moved to the Baltimore area. And I've been on the Hopkins faculty since 1981. I have a private practice on my farm north of Baltimore, where we also raise cattle and chickens. And I'm the editor of the Southlands, which is the newsletter of the Southern Psychiatric Association, which I've been very active in. And I'm also editor of the Maryland Psychiatrist for the Maryland Psychiatric Society. At one time, I was speaker of the APA Assembly. So I've been busy, still active.
All right.
And you didn't train me because I'm older than you are. That's why you didn't train me. I'm 75
Well,
now, and I'll bet you're not.
Well, I will cop to not being 75, but that's all the information you're going to get out of me about that. Okay. So, Dr. Spencer, do you guys know each other?
Yes, we do. From
Yes,
the
we
Southern
do.
and
It's been a long time.
yeah.
All right. And then there was Dr. Silva, De Silva.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm a little out of place because I am a medical student applying to psychiatry this year, and I saw the information online and I was like, I wonder if I'm allowed into this.
Oh, well, certainly you're welcome. You're certainly
thank you.
welcome.
I
All
appreciate it.
Okay, absolutely. So this is what this is, and I only got the one thing that I was going to share with you guys, and that is, okay, if I can advance, okay, the tracks. So I think one of the things that I will cop to in all my many, many years of being the program director is that I had this notion, and I'm an old dog that can learn new tricks. Let's put it that way. So I came into residency education believing that it's probably best if everybody does the same thing. You know, everybody has the same rotations, you know, just different order. And I wanted everybody to have the same experience. But I think a more modern way to think about it is that residents may have the opportunity to maybe differentiate, maybe explore some different areas a little bit sooner rather than later. And that is the nidus for tracks. And so one of the oldest tracks that we have is the research track. those of you who've been around for a minute may recall when Jeff Lieberman, who's now the chair at Columbia, was our vice chair for research. He and Bob Golden were interested in bolstering the ranks of people going into research. And it was then that we kind of set up a research track. Brad Gaines is very much involved in the research track. And in our unique structure, where the second year is an outpatient year, residents get the opportunity, instead of doing a community psychiatry day, to have a day devoted to research. And that's been our oldest track. And one of the new developments about that is that we're thinking about having a separate match number for research. Yes, that's a relatively new. There's something called, well, you can set up a separate match and a reversion, such that if you don't get somebody who is interested in research to match into those spots, they can revert back to the general. So our total number of spots will be the same, but we'll probably have a slot or two set aside for people who are interested in research, and it may be MD, PhD types. So John Gilmore is our vice chair for research, and he's very much involved in that. And we certainly have a very deep research portfolio. And so there are a number of different areas where people could find areas to do research, from alcohol and substance abuse to optogenetics and interventional psychiatry. We just have a really deep research bench. And so that's one of the things that we're thinking about for this upcoming year, as a matter of fact. So, and to make ourselves, and it doesn't have to be an MD, PhD type. When we set up the research track initially, we wanted it to be appealing to two sets of people. There are some people who have a research portfolio. They know how to do research. They've done research. They just needed the time and the mentoring and the space to do it. And some people have done bench type, but the majority have done clinical research. This is going to be a more longitudinal track that has more depth to it. And it may be people who are MD, PhDs who definitely have kind of staked out territory. But the other group of people that we've always been interested in as far as the research track are people who may be research novices, who don't have a research experience, who want to learn how to do it, and provide them an opportunity, if they didn't in medical school or in other iterations in their life, have an opportunity to do research and be exposed to it and see if they can get bitten by the research bug, if you will. But nobody is locked into any track. They try it on for size, and if they find it is not to their liking, they're certainly able to go back to regular programming. So that's the research part of things. Now, the clinician educator track, we're fortunate enough that Winston is on the call with us. And Winston conceptualized the clinician educator track. I'm gonna brag a little bit because he'd never tell you this. When he was a resident, he came up with the idea for the clinician educator track when he was a resident. And it was a kind of response to the research side of things, because the reality is that a lot of people enjoy being in academic medicine, academic psychiatry, but they're not necessarily drawn to the research part of things. They like educating the next generation of medical students and residents. And obviously, academic centers can't exist without the clinician educators. I mean, in some ways, they're the backbone of what we do in residency education. So I'm going to kick it to Winston to talk about the clinician educator track, because obviously the originator knows a whole lot more about it than I do. Go ahead, Winston.
Well, thanks, Karon. Good evening. I'm Winston Lee, in case we haven't met before. For context, I did my residency training here from 2014 to 2018. So as you maybe surmised, I'm much more on the junior side of the faculty. Some people might think those are the dates I attended high school, but I promise you those were my residency dates. As Dr. Dawkins mentioned.
And we are on a first name basis. He's just very genteel.
That's right.
For you guys.
My passion was always teaching and education. And when I joined the residency, the research track was the only track in existence. But I, for myself, wished to get to pursue a track of study towards becoming an educator, getting enhanced teaching experiences in residency, getting dedicated mentoring towards becoming an academic physician. So the idea to create the track really came from my own experiences of something I wish I had, or something I wish I got to enjoy when I was a resident here myself. So together with another alumni, who many of you know, Dr. Gary Gala, a much more senior alumni, we really created this program for folks with those interests who were excited about teaching, who were interested in pursuing academia, who wanted dedicated mentoring, who wanted carved out opportunities to teach students beyond what a typical resident would do in residency. So that's what the track is. We have basically two main parts. We have enhanced teaching experiences. The track residents are actually giving lectures and courses, leading small groups, doing things beyond what a typical resident would do as far as teaching. And then we have a seminar just for the track residents where we learn about special teaching techniques, using technology in the classroom, active learning, a lot of different specialized teaching techniques for these folks to become better educators. So we've been in existence now for 4 years. I think I see a couple of the alumni actually of the track here tonight. So it's been a lot of fun, and I've been very honored to enjoy the support of Dr. Dawkins and the department leadership in the track.
All right. Well, thank you. I was trying to mute myself and I ended up advancing the slide, but thank you very much, Winston. And I will also further brag on Winston that he was a chief resident, as was Austin Hall, who went away, and Rachel Frisch was a chief resident as well, as was Evan Vitello, a chief resident, as was Warshaw Faison. Hey, Warshaw, how are you? As was Dana Doctor. So, I mean, quite an illustrious group of alums we have here today.
We can't get enough of y'all, I don't think.
So Austin Hall, he did his residency at UNC, and then he went away and he did more community psychiatry, but he rejoined the faculty and is involved with the STEP clinic, but he brought an experience in informatics. And this was about the time that, isn't Epic going to take over the world if they haven't already? I don't know who among you hasn't, certainly had to deal with an electronic medical record, but there was a time when there were maybe 1 or 2 or 3 burgeoning electronic medical record systems, but as far as I can tell, Epic may have won out. And we were, dealing with Epic, learning how to do Epic. And I think one of the things that informatics can do for us, amongst other things, is whether or not Epic can work for us, or if we're just going to work for Epic. I mean, Epic has job security. They will be here forever and ever and ever. And Evan, let me ask you, if memory serves, did you do informatics as well?
Yeah.
I know you were a super user for Epic.
Yes, I was in that as it got started.
Yes, okay. So, and you did some clin ed stuff too, didn't you?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, see, he's just a pluripotent stem cell who can just, differentiate into whatever the need may be. So when Austin came back and Epic was certainly taking over the world, and we were getting accustomed with Epic, there was a lot to learn. And there were a lot of things that could lend itself to better efficiencies with Epic. I know certainly there have been times when I spent more time in Epic documenting the encounter than I actually did with the patient. And so Evan and others were helping some of us, gray-haired people learn how to be more efficient with Epic, to streamline our documentation, to use some of the order sets and the other efficiencies that are in Epic. But the other piece of it is that there's data in Epic to be mined, looking at, just Austin had one tool in Epic where he could tell you how much time you spent documenting an encounter. There are things that you could look at as far as population health, demographics, diagnoses, that sort of thing that would be very helpful in having a tool like that. And Evan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you know me, that's what I do. And it's you. So I have no problems putting you on the spot. Will you tell us a little bit more about what your experiences were in the informatics track? And if I've summarized it well?
Yeah, I think you summarized it really well. I think it started from kind of the idea of efficiency in Epic, like you were outlining. We were using phrases from like Jen Richards or Lisa Lindquist, who new interns didn't know who they were and didn't know how to find their notes. And so we tried to standardize things initially across the board so people knew what to use and how to use it within Epic. And then it did kind of evolve into more of the sort of looking at data to understand how we interact with Epic and how we can do it better. So one of the things that we initially did was like looking at burnout measures, and that's what you were referring to with Dr. Hall, looking how much time we spend in notes and things along those lines. So yeah, I think it'll continue to probably evolve and likely focus on both, but I think there's being a further push now to sort of like wearables and technologies and apps. And so I think that might be another iteration that the track might take on.
Wearables, Evans? You're not going to be implanting any chips in us, right?
No, Dr. Frisch knows about wearables too. She was doing an Apple Watch study, I remember, a few years back, and that has continued to sort of grown as people are, having more focus on mental health and what we can track that patients are wearing every day.
Okay, fair enough. And for those who don't know, Evan, to use a line from The Godfather, no, it's not The Godfather. Yes, it is The Godfather. Just when he thought he'd gotten away, we pulled him back in. So Evan
Part 3, Karon, Godfather Part 3. That's right.
Okay. He's going to be coming back to us after he finishes his forensic fellowship at Yale. So will you be involved in informatics when you come back, Evan?
I think so. Dr. Hall told me to keep a couple days a month aside. So I guess so.
Okay.
I don't know if it was a choice or not, but yes.
Evan doesn't know it yet, but his implanted chip will soon activate and he will then return.
And hopefully you won't need to be, when Epic first rolled out, they were super users and they were at the elbow. So hopefully you won't have to be at the elbow with too many of us when you come back. All righty. So next is the mental health equity track. And so Laura, I was going to ask you, when you were a child fellow, and did you overlap with Ty Hunt Harrison?
No.
Okay. What about you, Rebecca Taylor? Did you overlap with Ty?
I was in the same class with Laura. No.
Okay, fair enough. And
Nope.
there's JP who's joined us. So yes, Ty Hunt Harrison went to medical school at UNC. did her general and child fellowship, and then she did some, stuff in research. I think she did the T32 research training program for a moment, then went out into public sector psychiatry, and was most recently at Central Regional Hospital until we decided to develop this mental health equity track. And that is probably the newest track on the block. So you guys would have had to have been hiding under a rock not to be aware of a lot of increased awareness, about systemic differences, inequities, that sort of thing that have been here for a long time, but people are now perhaps having a moment where they're paying more attention than they used to. And Dr. Samantha Metzler-Brody, our department chair, decided that we should have a track and an effort to try to address inequities in health outcomes. Now, this is both at the local level, and the accreditation bodies for residency programs want people to be mindful of healthcare disparities, to make sure their trainees are aware of healthcare disparities, to be versed in the tools to try to close gaps as far as health outcomes and that sort of thing. So we have embarked on our inaugural mental health equity track, and it's going to have many components. I didn't know if Ty was going to be able to join us or not. Or Shema, you didn't overlap with Ty either, did you? I don't think so.
I don't think so, but her name is very, very familiar. So it may be that our paths had crossed.
Okay. Well, one of the things about being a program director for as long as I have is that some of the classes just kind of blend in together, and they're just one big class as opposed to me being able to keep up with who's here when. But the mental health equity track, there's going to be a relationship with the office in the med school. Nate Thomas was recruited to head up the medical school's office of inclusive excellence, or it may be called the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So there's an effort at the medical school level, and Ty is going to be doing it at our level, as well as interacting with the medical school. And the track will have opportunities for patient care, for research, for education, and for advocacy, as we both identify some of the outcomes gaps or access to care. And I think certainly health equity in terms of just even access to COVID vaccine, for example. There is certainly a burgeoning demand for mental health care because of the mental health sequelae of the pandemic, and underrepresented communities, minority communities, lower socioeconomic communities may not have the same access to health care, even though we sometimes think that virtual care is the great equalizer. But you have to have access to, internet, have the technology equipment and the wherewithal to use it to even take full advantage. And I've seen certainly some data to suggest that even with the virtual platforms, people don't have as much access to care as they used to, or as more so than the in-person. So the mental health equity track is our most recent one. And then we have a kind of informal track, the administrative track. And that's Carrie Brown. Carrie Brown is a member of our faculty, but she actually did her residency training at another institution, the one we, colorfully call the one up or down the road. So what is it, 8 or 10 miles from us? She trained there and took a job at I think it was, yeah, at Central Regional, where she had an opportunity to work with some of our trainees. And now she is in our Department of Health and Human Services. And she has informally mentored people who are interested in the administrative side. We have some people in tracks now who, were torn between which one of these they would do, and have had a combination of, okay, well, let me do some of this and let me also do some of that. And so Carrie Brown has been willing to provide some administrative experiences for people who want to see that side of things as far as policy, more policy driven. And Winston, I was going to ask you, do you have such a hybrid track person now in terms of doing clin ed and something else?
I think we've had folks who, I think, yeah, like Dr. Vitello did, participate in the activities of multiple tracks. There's a current resident, Kate Dixon, who's formerly in the clinician educator track, but who has been very active in mental health equity work, and including, appropriately enough, at the education of diversity, equity, inclusion topics. So she's someone who comes to mind. One of our current chief residents, as you know, Sam Lindner, I think was formerly in my education track, but I know, like Evan, was very active in the informatics work. So yeah, we've got folks who, yeah, have multiple interests.
Okay, well, I'm going to pick on Dana Doctor, who was also a chief resident and did the clin ed track, I believe. And so Dana, I was just going to ask you, how's that informed what you're doing now in terms of returning to UNC and having a role in, I think, medical student education?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, my current role is with the Associate Clerkship Director for the Psychiatry Clerkship for our medical students with Dr. Malloy. So yeah, I think, still doing a lot of just teaching, lectures. And so the things that we worked on in clin ed have been beneficial in that way. Some of the more kind of academic administrative things that we've talked about in terms of like a CV and how to, work on contracting and stuff like that has been helpful. So I think it's a lot more than just doing talks and learning how to be a good teacher, but, managing students, giving feedback, all sorts of good stuff.
All righty. Well, I'm going to stop sharing this. And so, Winston, is there anything else you want to add before we kind of turn to some general conversation?
I don't think so.
All right. I see the JP, you're on the call. I see your name. And so I was just trying to remember when you were a resident, I don't know that we had these particular tracks. Is that your recollection?
I don't think we had any tracks at all that I can. Well, I take that back. I'm sorry. No, not these particular tracks. There was certainly kind of more informal, people who were more interested in doing academics versus going on to forensic versus that sort of thing. Yeah, but it wasn't nearly as broken out as this seems to be.
And so during your residency, I know you're doing private practice now, would any of these tracks have any appeal to you?
The equity track is certainly interesting. I always really liked the education track. But I kind of always saw myself going out into the community and just having and being in practice, not necessarily doing research or anything like that. And so I was really kind of more focused on really getting as shored up clinically as I could possibly be.
Okay, fair enough. And I think in your practice, you kind of, toward the end, you got interested in CBT. Is that right? If memory serves?
I kind of made my own I worked with Dr. Frenaris and had her as a mentor and did a lot of extra CBT work with her because that was what I wanted to do. And I still do that. I still do some CBT.
Okay, Warshall, I'm looking at your chat. Yeah, I recall that Warshall, I told you she was a chief. She went to med school at UNC and then went again up the road, down the road, or which direction is the road, Warshall, to do your Gero fellowship. And then you really got involved in pharma and research in geriatrics, is that right?
Yes, after UNC, I went to Duke for my geriatric psychiatry fellowship, and during that time was very active in the American Psychiatric Association, and Jacobo Mentzer from the Medical University of South Carolina became one of my mentors, and he recruited me to Charleston, where I focused my efforts primarily on research, but also seeing patients as well. And that's how my research career kind of expanded by doing not only pharmaceutical research, but NIH grants as well.
Okay, all righty then. So good to have you on this call. And I see Varanga. Hello, Varanga. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I know we're supposed to be about business, but my goodness, I'm just seeing all these familiar faces. And so you went into outpatient psychiatry. You still in Charlotte? And would any of these tracks had appealed to you?
I apologize, Dr. Dawkins. I missed the initial part of the presentation. So
okay. So we have research track, we have clinician educator tracks, we have an informal administrative track, and now we have an informatics track.
In that case, I would probably say administrative. I'm seeking opportunities, particularly this year, to sort of advance in that direction.
Okay.
And so, right now it's mostly mentorship in terms of my education in that area.
Okay, fair enough. And that reminds me, Laura, you spent a year on Capitol Hill. And so I guess the administrative policy things might have been of interest to you during your residency. And I don't know if you're still working in that area.
Yes, yeah. So I stayed in DC. I'm at Children's National in DC. I am still working on advocacy. If I did these track, I would have taken the administrative health policy and maybe the advocacy part of the mental health equity and combine them together. That's probably how I would have done it. But yeah, I have developed, I'm also the associate program director of our child fellowship. So I've created a 2-year advocacy curriculum just about advocacy and health policy. So that's very still involved in that.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I'm glad you got into that because, Winston obviously was not persuaded by the very bad example he saw during his residency to get in program direction. But, hey, what can I say? Farishta Ali, you're a new face to me. And so are you a medical student who's interested in learning about UNC?
Hi, everyone. Hi, my name is Farishta Ali. I'm originally from Afghanistan. I live in Texas, and I'm very interested in your psychiatry residency program.
Okay, all right. So we've talked about a lot of things, and in a nod to Dr. Spencer, one of the things that has been discussed in terms of helping people find their way is whether or not we should have a psychotherapy track, because you guys recall from your residency, there's some people who seem to kind of gravitate toward biology, pharma, and other people really get invested in psychotherapy or, go on to do the Psychoanalytic Institute, or really like JP did, kind of immerse themselves in cognitive behavioral therapy psychotherapy. So yeah, there are people who become very interested in the various forms of psychotherapy. Any comment about that, Dr. Spencer? I think you're still muted.
You hear me now? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think over the years, especially the last couple of decades, been a active discussion about, what is the proper role of psychotherapy in a residency program, as opposed to more biological psychiatry. And I think the ebb and flow of psychotherapy training has been an interesting kind of thing. And I think we've been fortunate to have a psychoanalytic institute or training program here that's involved both the other place down the road and us. And also when I was in psychoanalytic training, also Washington, D.C., as a matter of fact, institute. So we were very fortunate to have input from a lot of interesting teachers. And so including some who would travel in the early days, who actually traveling down from New York to Florida, and they would stop on the way here and give us a couple of lectures and case discussions. Lucy Yesner was one who was head of our child program for some years, who was recruited by George Ham, who used to be the namesake of this alumni association way back when. But so in recent years, I think we've had a number of talented residents who have gotten interested in psychoanalysis and went on to either during the latter part of their residency or early after graduation applied and continued their education in the psychoanalytic study program, which is now broadened out so that it's not particularly for the training of just psychoanalysts, but also dynamic psychotherapists and psychologists and social workers and other people who have interest in that approach and have some talent in that, and also who want to get some personal treatment to help them in their understanding of patients. So I think the whole enterprise has broadened out, just like the tracks in our residency program. I think there are now tracks in the psychoanalytic study center. So there's something there for almost everybody that has an interest in psychodynamics. And as a matter of fact, when I graduated from our program and I joined the Institute, my assignment was predominantly in consultation liaison psychiatry. And it wasn't really in outpatient work for the first 14 years or so that I was in the department. So there's plenty of room for psychodynamic understanding, including research. And the first paper that I wrote was a follow-up study of consultation patients and what were the factors that led to them being involved in psychotherapy. So there's a lot of research opportunity, and there's a lot of interest. And the other thing that I was going to mention is the in IMH at the time that I was junior faculty, they had an IMH psychiatrist teacher program that you had for 2 years that paid for travel expenses to visit other institutions, other centers, and to see what kinds of teaching and what kinds of research they were doing. And so I was able to go up to Cleveland and their institute up there and their academic center, and down to Gainesville and up to Rochester and so forth, and to visit and learn something about their approaches. So I hope they still have a educator teacher program somewhat. Do you know whether
That
they?
I don't know. I do not know. And I did spend some time at the NIMH, but I don't recall it being there when I was there.
There's a career research program, and there was a career teacher program as well.
All right. Well, certainly Dr. Spencer knows more about the history of the department because he's been affiliated with it for a very, very long time. But I'm gonna pivot to Caroline because I haven't picked on her as a current trainee. But I think all the people assembled here who did their training here would agree that we don't give lip service to psychotherapy training, that it does exist side by side with everything else that we do. And we really make sure that the residents understand and know how to do psychotherapy. And when CBT became one of the competencies, we certainly incorporated that as well. So Caroline, would you agree with that?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, actually, I was just thinking about that. This year as a fourth year, even as a child fellow, we had a group of fourth year residents who met weekly with Dr. Hutto for an hour at 11 o'clock on Fridays. And we would just talk about our cases. And even, like I said, as a child fellow, I kept one psychodynamic adult case that I presented at conference, I think back in February. So anyway, we would just learn from each other, and it's always great to hear Dr. Hutto's perspective. So that was sort of an advanced supervision opportunity that we had in addition to our, general psychotherapy training. So I think that there are definitely experiences for people who are really interested in therapy. It's just you sort of have to seek them out and find them. But yeah, I think the therapy training is a real strength of this program.
All right, thanks, Caroline. And for those of you who don't know, Dr. Spencer and Dr. Hutto, who were referenced, are card-carrying analysts, if you will, and very much involved in our psychotherapy training. So I have just kind of talked. And so Rachel, I'm gonna kick it back to you.
Yeah, I have a question for you all, actually. So Dr. Spencer mentioned the phrase, there's something here for everyone. And I think at UNC, many of us chose that program as our number one for those of us who ranked it number one, and the high up for those who didn't. I mean, it's impressive based on the subspecialty training that we have at UNC. And that's why many of us chose it, because it's something that you don't see in the vast majority of programs that are out there. How can we revamp the Alumni Society so that we can benefit in a symbiotic relationship between all of this training we've had that's so subspecialized, and now these great, well-trained people are out in the world and doing great things. I remember vividly, Laura, you coming to speak to us about your time on the Hill and what you've done there, and being like amazed and wanting more of that connection as a resident. And I think, the faculty we have at UNC on main campus is obviously like incredible and very, very busy. And it would be nice sometimes to kind of liaise with people who are doing similar work in a different capacity. And I'm wondering, as an alumni, now that's not faculty or full faculty anymore, how can we be involved with you all and supporting the same educational goals, and potentially maybe even informally, like I know some of us have mentioned mentorship opportunities, whether that be collegial between ourselves or between those who are currently in training. Do you all have any suggestions, Dr. Lee, Dr. Dawkins, about how we can add more of that from the network base that we're building?
I'm really excited about that idea, Rachel. You may do this already, but my first thought is just a database, a live database of alumni and maybe what they do now, their interests. Often trainees come up to me and say, I'm interested in this, or I know Karon gets this, or I'm actually interested in moving to this area. Do you know folks who are in this area who do this kind of work? And Karon obviously has more of a database that lives in her brain that connect folks. But sometimes me being more junior, I said, oh shucks, I know maybe one or two folks, but shucks, with our huge roster of alumni, there's probably more that I am aware of. And sometimes I shucks, if there was a resource that maybe had that written down somewhere, that sounds maybe pretty nice, and maybe what you're speaking to.
Yeah, I'm happy to put something like that together on our Facebook page. And I know there is, I'm still learning how to maximize my use of, I need some informatic technology, Evan, help with that. But there's an option on the Facebook group for mentorship. And like, you can sign up to be a mentor and you can sign up to be a mentee and you can get paired together. I think Taka Soda was the only one who jokingly used it for a day. But I think that's a great platform that potentially we could use something like that. But even just a Google Drive or a Google Doc that you guys had access to and that we kept. Sam Weiss does have that roster of all former alumni, but I think what's more challenging to maintain active is like, what are you doing and what bandwidth do you have to potentially engage in some of these things? Like, I know Dr. Hutto in the past has pulled upon a lot of community psychotherapists to do some supervision work. I don't know where he gets them from, and they're great. And I wonder if they're ever looking for more, how would alumni know that? And kind of how can we mutually kind of make sure we're on the same page? And I'll do that from my end. I'm happy to kind of post some information and try to get people to sign up or at least comment about their availability and interest in some of these categories. And I'd love for you guys to share that with the residents if they find it helpful.
When I was doing that program of supervisors, a lot of them were psychoanalytic people who had an interest in volunteering for supervision. As far as I know, they consist of psychiatrists, psychologists, and people who have a lot of clinical experience and who enjoy teaching a lot. And the ones who are conveniently located, of course, have an advantage, but there are people who have been doing one or two resident supervisions for a long time and who really look forward to doing that. I think it's a win-win, all around.
Absolutely. I had another quick question for everybody who's kind of in the group. Who right now is actively engaged in teaching in some capacity? So I know today's topic was on teaching, and those of you who are teaching, are you all at academic institutions, or do you do some teaching in the private community or at different hospitals as well?
I'm actually a teaching fellow, so I'm teaching medical students and I'm also mentoring them.
Oh, great. I think that's something that I'm interested in as far as those of us who are in the private community sector nowadays. How do you maintain some of that? Is it mostly mentorship, or are there other ways? I know it's almost a taboo topic that I know we're not directly talking about today, but I get tons of emails from mid-level providers who are wanting to be supervised and wanting to be trained. And I know there's lots of opinions either way about that. I find it interesting that even though, like, if you are a PhD or if you are an MD, those students who are in your same kind of track might not be approaching you in the same ways. And I wonder if that's just knowledge about you existing, right? And so again, going back to like bridging that gap for knowing that we're here and we're available, even if it's just for a cup of coffee, like informal education track, to kind of help each other out. But I never know what to say to those other emails, but it's amazing how there are a lot of students out there who are wanting to learn, and we are resources, whether or not we think of ourselves that way. Anybody else have any other questions or thoughts, or want to get their name already on a listserv to be involved more in education at UNC, or have educational opportunities that you need folks for in your institutions?
I would just second what I'm hearing from you. I'd like to be more involved. You can put my name on a list. I have in years past taken advantage of opportunities to come and give like just a brief lecture to residents about what life in private practice is like and what kinds of considerations you're going to run into, and would like to be able to continue to do that again. It seemed like this past year, I don't know, I imagine everybody's been running around like chickens with their heads cut off with trying to cope with all the changes, and haven't known how to get in touch with people. So having a definite kind of pipeline that's established to be able to say, hey, I'm here if you need any help. I like being in a mentorship role, and I have some concerns that the pipeline for people who are wanting to come out and do outpatient psychiatry practice is dwindling. And so would ensure that that pipeline stays strong if I have anything to say about it.
JP, I vividly remember your career series that you bring the good pizza when you spoke. But yeah, I think that's a great platform is the career series. I remember loving those, and mostly available to third and fourth years, if I'm remembering correctly. But like, if there are ways for us to do more of that and have that be a sign up sheet that's available to the alumni. And I know usually it's the clinician educator, like chief, the education chief that manages a lot of that. Winston, are you the person who would be the good conduit to get to that chief each year?
By all means, I'd be happy to, and that would be great. Yeah, we'd love to have more alumni. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or thoughts that people had?
Well, that does speak to something, JP, that yeah, most of us are not at UNC, are not in private practice. And so that is not something I can share any firsthand experience about. And so those resources are very important. Varanga, so was there any particular person who was a role model, mentor for you as you were getting ready to go into outpatient psychiatry?
I would say many of the attendings, no one in particular. I know I talked to Dr. Gaines about it. I know I talked to Dr. Malloy about it. I think the transition to being an attending was a little bit challenging for me. And I learned a lot really that first year. It's not that I didn't feel prepared. It was just the business of medicine. I don't think that I fully understood or appreciated some of these nuances. And even, little things like contract negotiations, I think, we should have a discussion about that for new graduates. I didn't know that I have these options available to me. And so I think I've been a little bit better at it as the years have gone by. And so I think I came back maybe within the first 2 years or so to lecture about how to even find a job in psychiatry. And I know right now at my hospital system, we have a Duke graduate who is going back to Duke pretty regularly to talk about opening a private practice because they feel so strongly about it. And they do feel like it is personally and financially rewarding. And so I'm sure I could talk to him about talking to our graduates about that because I know he goes up there pretty regularly. So yeah, we have a pretty strong group here in Charlotte.
And so for the students, I would say, yes, our residents do outpatient psychiatry. They spend a fair amount of time doing outpatient psychiatry, but they've not been as exposed to private practice or how to start a private practice. And so, and that's like I said, many of us haven't had that experience. And so Rebecca, I was thinking you did outpatient psychiatry for a while before you came back. Is that an accurate recollection?
Yep, I worked at Carolina Behavioral Care right after a fellowship, correct.
I think we've just found your next track. If y'all are looking for more, although there's plenty already and there's plenty to expand too, but business of medicine. I think that's one that even those of us who are out and having been involved in the business of medicine still could benefit from. So
I would very much second that.
I'll do your first lecture, Winston. You let me know when. Having just started my own practice, it's a steep learning curve, and a lot of it's not medicine anywhere along the way.
and Rachel has an MBA, so if she can't navigate it, I don't know if the rest of us are just probably just woefully unprepared.
No, it's real life learning versus book learning. You learn it real quick. It's different.
So Samantha Weiss, is there anything you want to say to the group as far as contacts or anything like that? I know I've talked to everyone, and so you're probably the host for this thing, and just wanted to give you an opportunity to say something if you needed to.
Thank you. And thank you so much for coming. I think that this was a really nice webinar for this month and timely with graduation, all the end of year events. I know that you and Dr. Lee are very busy, so I appreciate it. The only thing I have to say is that check out our alumni page on the website if you haven't. There's a contact information form. That's how you'll stay up to date and get invitations to webinars like this. And like Dr. Frisch mentioned a few times, we do have that alumni Facebook page. So we really are making an effort to get in contact with y'all. That's about it. Thank you again so much. Have a great evening. And next month, we're having Doctors Johnny Gherkin and Karon Bluth talk about wellness and mindfulness, a little break for the summertime. Check back in with yourself. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thanks, Dr. Dawkins. Thanks, Dr. Lee.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone. Good to see familiar faces.
Yes, it's so good to see you guys, and I hope the medical students and other visitors enjoyed it and found it informative. All right.
Yeah, future alumni, maybe.
Yeah, future alumni.
Future alum, yeah.
Thank you.
All right.